Are you ready to clerk over there?
Multitask.
All right.
I'll show you a nice picture. We'll just get away from all her sassy talking.
You guys all set? All right. I'd like to call the meeting to order. This is the Fond du Lac Board of Education, June 26, 2017 regular meeting. With the acting clerk, please call the roll.
Reister. Here. Hayes. Jones here. Strand.
Here.
Uselman. Here. Walk. Churchella.
Here. We have 5 members present. A quorum is present. And the Pledge of Allegiance tonight will be led by Board Member Peggy Breister.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Peggy, for that. And tonight, following announcements that following adjournment of the regular meeting, the board will convene in a workshop to review suggested new textbooks for Fond du Lac High School College Geology, AP Communications, and AP Government and Politics for the 2017-18 school year, and also to discuss suggested revisions to the employee handbooks for teachers, professional educators, for the Educational Support Professionals Association, and for the custodial maintenance employees. Following that will be an executive session to consider a student expulsion as provided for in Wisconsin statutes 19.85 1A and F. At this time is our first audience to visitors and delegations. If anyone wishes to address the board on a school district related matter, I'd ask them to please step forward and do so at this time. Good evening.
Good evening. Bill Morgan, 47 St. Joe Circle. Tonight's agenda asked you to vote on the recommendation of the Insurance Committee for changes to the 2017-18 school year. The FEA Executive Committee has met and prepared a statement in regards to those recommendations. The letter is being sent to your district email, will be there shortly, and paper forms are available. First, the Fond du Lac Education Association would like to thank you for your dedication in keeping the Fond du Lac School District both a wonderful place for students and a great place for employees to work. The FEA has learned that the board was given recommendations regarding employee health insurance and may possibly be making changes to this very important employee benefit. The FEA has very experienced members who have served on the Joint Negotiations Committee in the past and have the history and knowledge that can explain why certain benefits were put in place. Through years of negotiating, one of our most critical issues was dealing with health insurance coverage, with premiums, and our experience rate, which would drive costs. The recommended proposal you have been asked to decide upon is troubling. As the representative body for teachers in Fond du Lac, it is our responsibility to bring issues to your attention when errors have occurred. The recommended proposal you have been asked to decide upon is troubling, as I said. In the past, the district and the FEA used the interest-based process to drive our conversations and would end up with win-win scenarios. Although it may not be the current practice, it was the way the district chose to do business. The FEA believes the Insurance Committee has erred in singling out individuals who currently take the MOI in lieu of health insurance. If you accept the proposal, you'll be taking away a negotiated benefit based on flawed judgment. As you reflect upon your upcoming decision, there are a few points the FEA urges you to consider. First, the issue, which happens to be health insurance premiums are increasing. The problem, people on the plan are overutilizing and driving its cost. The objective, to find a way to ensure employees are using the plan wisely. The solution, for which you'll be voting on, does the proposed solution specifically or logically address the problem of overusage? The FEA recognizes that there are other contributing factors when looking at insurance and welcome an in-depth conversation in regards to that insurance. We have members who have been a part of making insurance adjustments for over 10 years. We also welcome a conversation on how the MOI and its negotiated dollar amount were set in the first place. The problem is with the committee recommending you penalize employees who don't use the plan and don't contribute to overutilization. This is a knee-jerk cost savings and penalizes a specific group. Additionally, when dealing with solutions that affect negotiated benefit and salary, the FEA believed the Insurance Committee has overreached its authority. As oversight for the Fond du Lac School District, you shoulder the difficult responsibility of ensuring our district is both an excellent place for learning and for working. Fond du Lac needs to be a place where employees want to start, stay, and retire. The FEA urges you to postpone the vote on your employee health insurance until the July 10th meeting, and that you not make changes to the maintenance of insurability benefit that was previously negotiated. The FEA Exec Board. Please note that this is not our desire nor our intent to blow up the work of the Insurance Committee. We greatly appreciate the time and legwork, I've served on many committees myself, that they have provided to get us to this point. What we are asking for is a small amount of time and an opportunity for a couple of extra sets of eyes and brains to ensure that the recommendations that you will ultimately decide upon solve the issues regarding insurance usage, and that we not single out a particular group in the process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the board on a district-related matter? Okay, seeing no further, we'll close audience to visitors and delegations. Move on next in the agenda to approval of the consent resolution agenda. If I could have a motion, please.
I move to approve the consent agenda as follows. Human Resources approval, resignation, Christina Binversi, ELL teacher at Lakeshore and Pyre Elementary Schools, effective June 14th, 2017. And employment recommendations effective for the 2017-18 school year. Melissa Costello, 1 FTE Library Media Specialist at Evans and Rosenau Elementary Schools at level 7. Mary Liz Jolka, 1 FTE Music Teacher at Elementary Schools, level 6. Samuel Krasny, 1 FTE Grade 3 Teacher at Rosenau Elementary School, level 1. Deborah Manchester, 1 FTE Music Teacher at Roberts Elementary School, level 11. Amy Mockert, 1 FTE Grade 3 Teacher at Pyre Elementary School at level 13. Peyton Peterson, 1 FTE Grade 2 Teacher at Pyre Elementary School, level 1. And Brett Strahota, 1 FTE Social Studies Teacher at STEM at level 1.
Second.
I have a motion and a second, and it looks like a few familiar names are coming back to our district. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. Is Ms. Julka, isn't she already a music teacher?
She was an LTSE.
Oh.
She did the LTSE for Julia Driscoll this last year, but she has also always helped out the district when we've had, we have one full-time elementary band person, but we always needed extra help depending on how many kids would sign up.
Okay.
And Mary Liz has done that periodically, probably for the last 10 years.
So she's finally getting a contract?
She's
Good for
done.
her, all right.
Well, she had it in
Oh.
the past, always wanted a contract
Oh,
because they
okay.
had a
I
family
see.
business, but now she's
Gotcha.
interested in coming back
Okay.
full-time.
Thanks for clarifying.
And how many vacancies do we have to fill yet are you working on for teachers?
I'd say 10 to 12.
Okay, so you're doing well
Yeah, we're
at this
good.
point in the
Yeah.
off-season, we'll call it. If there's no further comments, then would the clerk please call the vote?
Brewster.
Yes.
Jones, yes. Strand.
Yes.
Uselman.
Yes.
Trujillo.
Yes. Motion passes 5-0. And welcome to all the new employees. Next on the agenda is individually considered resolutions. A is from Business Services. At the June 12th Board Workshop, members of the District Health, Benefit, and Wellness Committee presented and recommended changes to the employee health insurance benefits. Would someone care to make a motion, please? Okay, I will move that the Board of Education approve the committee proposed benefit changes for employee health insurance with WCA Group Health Trust for 2017-18. And is there any second? Okay.
Well, I'll second it only to
Discuss.
move to
Postpone.
postpone.
Okay.
I don't know if we need a second or if we just let this one die. I don't know what the appropriate protocol would
Well,
be.
I'm not sure what our practices have been as far as a motion without a second being brought back. Or
That's,
some-
I guess
some-
that's what I'm thinking. We need to have
Yeah.
well, I could come back as something else, I guess.
Right. If you want to make the second and then
We can
make a
discuss it at
second.
least?
Yeah, sure. Okay, I'll put you down as a second and by Brycer. Floor is open for discussion. So whoever has questions.
Well, I think Mr. Morgan actually, spoke very well to this tonight, and while I know I wasn't here when the workshop took place, I think his points about bringing this before the people, bringing this before staff so they can have some input and some discussion is a really good idea. I appreciate all the hard work that the committee did, but I think something, when it impacts the full staff, they should have an opportunity to see it and to provide some input and maybe some historical background before we up and change it. Unless, I guess the question I also have is there any compelling reason that this has to be voted on tonight?
Is there a
But Marion would
timeline?
be the best resource
So
on
number
this
one,
topic.
our renewal is July 1. So that is a compelling reason. Number two, I would tell you that this process that was run, and I was not here last time, I was not here, includes representation from all the different groups that are on there. So this was not done in any, it was a transparent discussion. Actually, the historical perspective was represented that day. So there was not, Sharon was very, very able to give us a historical perspective of how it was determined, when it was determined, how much was determined. So that was that was part of our conversation. So I would tell you that, and as far as comments about utilization, that's all this committee has been doing for 10 years. We've been changing the policy in order to drive utilization in a more controlled way. The committee does our best job to improve people's health, control costs for everyone, and improve access. So there were some major changes 2 years ago when we did our renewal, which do exactly that, changes people's behavior by doing deductibles higher. So the committee looked at about 8 different options, and this was the options, the ones that are in front of you, that they felt represented everybody and was equally distributed. Now, we will never control uncontrollable health, meaning incidents. And we have had, unfortunately, some of our members have significant health issues, which will not be controlled by any change of any policy. So I will tell you, I can give you the Planet report if that's what you would like to know about the first 6 months versus the last 6 months. This is not about right now our members not utilizing this benefit correctly. I think there's always room for improvement, but we have had significant health costs due to some significant illnesses among our employees.
Did we, and again, I appreciate all the work that the committee has done, but at any point was this put out, were there recommendations that were that the committee came up with that were put out to all staff where they had an opportunity
So I
to
will
provide
explain
input,
how
or?
how the process goes. It's the same process we've been doing for over, actually now a decade. We have representation, including the FEA, on that committee. At that point, those members bring it back to their schools. There were minutes going back to all the different locations. This was as transparent as it could have been. Okay. And we received actually no feedback, which I was actually surprised. So that information went back, and I can show you minutes that Waters sent and Riverside sent and administrators sent, because that's how we do it. It's not a top-down model. The members that represent those schools and those locations share those minutes, and that was there.
All right, and if we don't renew by July 1st, then what happens?
Greg, can you respond to that, please?
Yes, you will have to renew by July 1st. The question is whether you renew with the status quo. If you renew, there's nothing saying that you're
couldn't.
stuck with that plan for 12 months. You can make changes to it, but if there's not a renewal, in theory, the insurance doesn't exist on July 1st, which obviously isn't.
So we could renew, meet July 10th, and make changes.
Yes, you'd
Without.
have to renew a status quo. Now, the reality is there's a significant price difference. You'd be renewing at the 12% renewal price that the committee worked to try to be able to reduce. But yes, you could do that and then make changes that in theory could be effective September 1st, October 1st. does take a little bit of lead time, but there has to be a contract in place in order for the insurance coverage to still exist.
So that was, the 12% was what was originally given. That was our contract that was given. Then we negotiated, and also I know that Mr. Gerlach is not here to respond to you as a board, but there is only a certain amount of money in your budget right now that is allocated for this. So if the cash in lieu is changed, you then will not have the money. That brought it back down to the percentage we have, which is in the budget, which is actually slightly over the budget.
So that was a squeak this time around to get it just below what we have allocated to spend on this benefit? Is
I'm
that
sorry,
what you're
Linda, I
saying?
didn't hear you.
The cash in lieu adjustment was to get this just below what- or
Correct.
just around what we
Correct.
needed in order to
Correct.
meet our
And,
budgeted
so I did
obligations?
pull up, they looked at all the different options that, they were given. We could have increased again co-pays for the primary physicians. They did not want to do that. We could have gone to a 3-tier pharmacy plan. They said, no, we do not want to do that. There are specialty drugs that would become a very high cost. So we looked at all of those different options. So I don't want anyone to believe that those options were not explored. And we had Kim Hurt working with us. Greg did an excellent job of really coming in. And we were really working at trying to get to the point which is in your budget.
Yeah.
And so that is really where we're at.
Well, and just to clarify, I mean, you said like minutes were sent out. I mean, so the committee had minutes and that was sent to every staff member. And I think, minutes are great, but let's face it, we don't always depending how long minutes are, it's a lot to weed through. Was there something sent out to staff that said, this is what we're going to recommend, do you want to weigh in on this?
I can send you the samples of many of the minutes that's sent. We have never preempted the members from how they express themselves to them, but I can send you, I'm happy to send those to you.
This benefit, do other districts give?
So I think that Ms. Simon gave you last time in
Yeah.
the workshop.
Right.
And you did have some questions, which I understood.
Right.
There were 3 more additional schools you wanted information on, and I think Ms. Simon provided that for you.
Well, when we look through that, honestly, there's only one that's even higher than what we're reducing to. So it's not like we're going to be driving people to another district that except for the one's gonna be
I'm
turning
not
people
talking
away
about
at the door, I guess,
benefit
but.
if you don't take insurance. Do other districts have that?
Yes,
Yes.
we were given
That was in our
listings of
packet,
those.
yeah.
Some
And-
districts do, some districts.
And some
Some
don't
don't
have
want
it
to.
at all.
That's right, okay, we
Yeah.
did have that.
Now, one of the indicators on that list you provided us, Rosendale Brandon, says 50% of a single plan. Do we know what that number is? Or is that just a floating
Depends
number?
on
What's
what
our
year.
single plan yearly? Would it be?
9,000, a little over 9, I'm guessing.
Okay,
The business person definitely does that, but it's around
Right.
9,000.
okay.
So that would still be below the 6 that we're offering for cash in lieu. Well, and
Yeah.
as far as changing behavior, we are raising the urgent care, premium, or not
Copay.
premium, but
Copay,
copay, thank you
right.
for the word. Other than that, though,
Well, and we
Um,
also are raising the premium from 12% to 13% for
Right.
people on the plan also.
mhm,
So, that's gonna be a change.
everybody's kind of kicking in a little here,
Yeah, I understand Mr. Morgan's concern, but I think to delay it would really cause problems regarding the budget and the cash flow. And, if this information would have been brought up even, the last meeting, that there was like so many people that were, opposed to it, because of this, we would have considered it, but now it's like, we're kind of have our backs to the wall.
So the question too, it indicates 169 employees take this cash in lieu of option. If they were to, say, jump onto our insurance, that would add to our burden significantly. Is there a crossover number where if X number of employees do this, we are not saving money?
So that was one of the questions we asked Greg, and we asked other schools around us. They did not experience that. You can't predict that. You're going to have, so what makes somebody move? It has to obviously be cost-effective for them to move.
Right, but my question is, how many employees would have to move before we would not be saving money by doing the cash in lieu of?
one,
The savings going from the 9% that was in the email that I believe was shared with you down to 6% was in the vicinity of $300,000. Probably 1.5% of that disparity was from the cash in lieu.
Okay.
So in theory, $150,000-ish in savings, $20,000 family plan, so 6-7 people.
Sure.
Is probably.
Is that
very
threshold?
loosely Hotel paper, the break even.
Yeah,
As you saw on the sheets that were shared, or the numbers that were shared at the workshop, the $7,100 is very much on the higher end of the cash in lieu totals that exist in school districts. My experience has been that the average is probably between $3,000 and $4,000.
Okay.
But as Marion said, it's very difficult to know everybody's individual circumstance where that tipping point is.
right.
Whether or not there will be people that will jump on the plan and actually reduce the savings or in theory raise the costs for
So
the district.
what is our, whatever we call it, open enrollment period where people indicate which insurance they take? Is that upon hire only, or is there a window of time for them to do that?
They have to prove that they don't have other insurance. So when people come in to sign up, either sign up or they have to let me know that they have lost insurance.
Okay.
In order to get back on our insurance. So for instance, many of the young kids we hire will stay on their parents' insurance till they're 26. So obviously about 2 months, I always tell them 2 months before their 26th birthday to come in so that there's no lag in coverage, and then they hop on our plan. So that, you have to have loss of coverage.
Okay,
There is an annual open enrollment required by the law as well. So once a year, someone could say, I wasn't on it last year. I'm going to change from accepting the alternate benefit cash in lieu.
Yes.
And jump on the health plan.
is that in the fall or otherwise?
It's mostly before renewal. Do you know when you run yours?
Well, it's always through the business department. So
Okay,
It's probably Wendy's turn.
Yeah.
okay,
Typically, it's normally near the end of the school year.
okay. I mean, does it coincide like when the state plans have their open enrollment or not so much?
Yeah, that's
Totally
October,
separate.
yeah.
Okay. Another question that has been, I think you guys are aware of too, was when we were looking at the deductibles, embedded, commingled, separate, if you could get into explaining that.
That actually did come through.
I think the board got a memo,
Yes.
which we
Yeah.
created, and really, I think that what before was, if you had a deductible and you met that deductible, you can meet it one time. But if I, for example, am going to, I go to primary physicians in town, I meet my deductible, and then I choose to go out of network for another provider,
To do it again.
I have to meet that deductible again.
Yeah.
There's no cost to the district on that. It is just, it's again a way to drive people to stay in network, which is a way to keep your cost down. So it means the individual, I would have to pay my deductible 2 times if I choose to go
Right.
out of network. If I don't go out of network, I have no difference here.
Is that new, or is that the way it's always been?
That is the embedded,
The
this is a
separation
new
is
one
new.
this year.
That's what the commingled versus separate meant in the.
That's
that
what
one
the
line, yeah.
commingle and.
I've never had
You
anything
weren't
else,
here
so-
last time, we asked
Yeah.
about it last
Yeah.
time, yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, did the committee also explore other carriers, period?
At this point, we did not choose to go out for an RFP. We're not in a position to do that right now because of where our utilization was, and because there was consensus among the group that Group Health Trust has been a very good provider for our employees. And they came in with a pretty reasonable rate, which we would not probably be able to match. And so what we had gone into the meeting with, saying that if they had come in with a rate that was not something that we could work with, then we would go out for bid.
Weren't we overusing when we left WEA as well?
I'm sorry?
Weren't we overusing when we left WEA
We're at a
and we
better
got
place
coverage?
than- We're at a better place than we were at that time, Mr. Dragella.
Okay.
So we have considerably brought that down.
Okay.
And the employee health clinic, the co-pays, all of the things we've done over the last 6 years are exactly for this reason. But we will never be able to control a high-cost cancer patient. We will never be able to control a high-cost infant. There are certain things that just by our virtue of our size. And this year, unfortunately for our poor employees, we've had some significant health which have impacted us, which are considered very high cost to us.
So what ultimately would trigger the committee to look for alternate carriers? And what would it take to do that?
I think if they had not come in with a reasonable amount, and also this is why we hire AFG, and they did not advise us. They felt as though we were at a very good place, and that they would not be able to most likely get us to be comparable. If you remember when we went, we changed to Group Health Trust, that's when we went out and we looked at and we interviewed everyone at that point.
Right.
And so we went through a very, very intensive period. The group also felt as though our employees don't like to change that often. It is hard for them to get used to who they're carrying. And, you know, that was not a welcome change that they wanted at this point, and we were not advised to do that.
Unless the rates are gonna drop, and then I would think people wouldn't care about changing every year.
If that was
Right.
possible.
Right.
Well, as
Right.
far as usage though, like, we still have some openings maybe to tweak the way the health clinic is used or open or things like that that would make it more convenient. I mean, we've done the professional
actually-
hours so people can get there right after school if they need to, but, you know, maybe we have different availability or something.
We
that would be-
actually look at all our utilization of our employee clinic. You're more than welcome to have all that data. We are at a higher rate than other comparables. Our hour distribution is good, and our rate of unduplicated employees that use it is very high.
Can I ask what
So-
the hours are for it?
Yeah.
When is it open for them?
I'm sorry?
Do you know, when are the hours for those, do you
I'll
know,
look
right
it
off the
up.
top of your head?
I'll
Oh,
look it up
that's
to you.
okay, don't, well,
Now,
maybe
there's
we can talk.
Saturdays,
Okay.
we have tried to get as many places, but we have custodians that work second shift, so, and we have dependents, because it's not just for employees.
Right.
So, the hours that the employees chose.
Well, I'm just thinking like that Sunday afternoon strep throat, you know, you do, or, you know,
Well,
whatever. Can
We
you
only
wait till the
get
next day
40
or not?
hours, so you have
Okay.
to distribute those 40 hours.
So you have to, okay, that answers
Yeah,
my
that's
question,
only we-
okay. all
That's
right.
what we get.
And
Okay.
like, there's a variety of 7 o'clock in the morning to maybe 1 o'clock, and then there's days where it's from like 1 to 6 or 7 at night.
Okay,
So there's.
we try to stretch it so we can get as many people served as possible, okay, yeah, the 40-hour question, that helps me understand, thank you.
Greg, did you have a?
Yes,
Please.
and thank you. One of the challenges that any employer, and certainly any public school in Wisconsin faces, is this balancing act of, do we go out to look at alternative carriers and alternative markets or not? This last year, as Marion has alluded to, the claims results in total were not good, but most of them were things beyond the control of individual employees. For every dollar that Group Health Trust took in, they paid out more than $1.10 in claims, which means not only did they not cover their administrative costs and their salaries and claims processing, they lost a significant amount of money on the group. So it's a very hard time to take a group out to market and say, hey, this is a group that we want you to consider being the insurance carrier for, when the claims are not good. They recognize that it's going to be a group that they have to charge a significant premium on. So when we saw the 12%, we're able to work with the committee to get it down to 6%, understanding that the changes between 12% and 6% were painful. The intent of the committee was to try to be able to not just put all that on people who are sick and using a lot of claims dollars, but to try to be able to put it across the breadth of employees. Everybody pays their premium if they're insured, whether they use the plan or not. They're impacted some. The people who are using the plan more than others, the urgent care copay and the deductibles impact them. The people who don't take the the alternate benefit impacted them. It was a way to try to be able to have not one group of employees take the full brunt of it, but the marketing with a 6% increase, collectively the committee, and yes, we did agree that you probably wouldn't get anything close to the offering that we were able to get out of the WCA GHT group based on your claims right now. So it was kind of, I use this insensitively, it's kind of like saying I'm going to shop for homeowners insurance when the house is on fire. This is not on fire, but it is a situation that it's harder to attract alternative carriers in a year where you have this greater than 110% payment made by the carriers.
I want to add one other point, and that Group Health Trust actually aggressively went on a limb for us to bring us in at the number they did. And they serve on our committee, so they know the things we're doing. So they know we are trying to control utilization. We are trying to bring it down. We have done preventive efforts for the past years, and they are working. And they believed in us enough to come in at a lower rate. So I want to tell you that it was not, this was not an easy discussion, but again, I'm going to say to you again, co-pays were looked at. The pharmaceuticals were looked at. So there were a list that we went, changing co-insurance from 100% to 90% in network. So there was many, there were many different options looked at, and everyone had, discussions on those ones. We had 90% attendance at that meeting, so if you are wondering how many people were represented.
90% of the committee?
90% of the committee was there, which represents every building, every group.
And
So-
I understand what you're saying, and I have no doubt that the committee communicated, but we also have someone here saying that they were not that it was not communicated in a way in which the staff felt that they could have provided input. And I guess that's what's really troubling to me. I'm not even saying I'm opposed to what the committee came up with. What's most troubling to me is, again, we have a speaker telling us that this was kind of dropped on them without any notice, and they're asking to be included in the conversation.
There was an FEA representative that was part of that discussion, and that was at the table.
So why
And
do,
that was at that time on the executive committee.
then why do we hear that staff
I
does
can't
not
answer-
feel included?
I can't answer that question.
Yeah, and I guess that's what's.
And this is the same process we have done for the last decade. So this is not a new process with
But-
changes.
It's always been a committee for a decade.
Yeah, they've had, the committees been working on it.
Obviously not before negotiations were.
Right.
I'm just
And
telling you.
that's the difference.
I am telling
Right.
you what we have done when we look at the benefit package and how that was done. And there was an FEA member present when that vote was taken.
Is there more we could have done to have let staff know what the recommendation was before it came before the board?
I can't answer that question, Peggy. I'm
And-
telling you how we do it.
And I think I can speak to the last meeting when that question was brought up somewhat by myself, that now that there was a proposal in place, do your members, do the people
Right.
affected know this information and get that out to them? And it doesn't sound like that necessarily happened
Until
thoroughly.
that meeting.
Well, I don't know if it happened after our last meeting or not, but clearly these numbers were in place and we knew what the proposals were, and I would have thought we'd have heard something sooner rather than right now.
So it could have been, though, the last meeting when it came up in workshop where some people may have found out about it.
There were members of the committee, a number of members of the committee here speaking to it and presenting to us, so.
But
and
people
this-
outside of the committee,
The
yeah.
suggestion was
on
for
our
them to
agenda too.
disseminate that
Right.
information in case there was more that needed to be addressed. So I don't know what took place after that. But one question I have too about the WCA Group Health Trust, we said our usage was 110%, 100 roughly?
Yeah.
And it depends on the time period you look at, 112%.
Okay, so are we saying then they did not make any money, or they didn't make their profit targets?
They lost money. The 112% just virtually means for every dollar they took in premium, they paid $1.12 in claims
From this district?
from this
Yes.
district.
Okay. Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
And, the people that use it, again, you talked about it was legitimate use. I mean, we don't want people who use the insurance to feel like, oh my gosh, I had this illness and I used it and
Right.
it's, it's legitimate. And the whole idea of a group plan is to spread the costs between all the members because, that's how it's supposed to work.
So, and this cash in lieu of benefit that we provide, I think, is a good benefit. I think it's an attraction for people to come here and work or to stay here when they see what other districts do not offer. So I'm hoping that we don't use this to chip away further in the future in order to gain more savings. I would like us to be able to say, hey, you know, come here and work here. We have this as one of the incentives for you to be an employee here. So I think it's a good benefit that I don't want to see it eroded further.
One last thing.
Go right ahead.
And I apologize, I know I wasn't here when this was talked about, but is it up to the members of the committee to take it back to their schools, or does the district send something out as a whole to let staff know? Because, I'll stop there.
It's exactly as Marion described it. The committee members, our committee member in this building sends us an email that summarizes what happened at the meeting,
So-
in addition to the minutes.
And that's
So
happening in
it-
each building?
Is
Well,
that,
like
is
Marion
it,
said, each building does it how they'd like to do it. It's like a student
Okay.
council model.
so wouldn't it make more sense, I mean, for something of this magnitude, I mean, you're talking about my health insurance, wouldn't it make sense for there to be one email that went out to everybody?
They all
I
had,
mean,
they
could-
had the proposal, they could share that proposal, there was nothing. It's the way it's been done, Peggy. Whether
Yeah.
that should be done differently is not, I can't change anything that was done. So I am telling you how the communication has been done in the past and how we did it again.
Okay.
Two things. Two things. One is, you pretty much stay with the same insurance company, because every time you change, they have to then get to know the district and what's being used, what kind of health plan they got, HRAs, all the rest of it. So it's good to stay with the same company, so they learn about the district and the usage. It's really unfortunate that somebody is so unfortunate, then those people who are healthy to have to go through that. My feeling is, and it's no different than where I work, you're supportive of those people who are so unfortunate. And you can count your blessings that you aren't one of those. So I think it's important that you're looking out for your fellow coworker who's going through a traumatic situation. And if you're healthy, you know what, that's an insurance premium. If it goes up, it goes up. Hopefully that's something you never have to use. So that's my 2 cents worth.
Is there any other discussion on this item? If there's no further discussion, would the clerk please call the vote?
Strand,
Yes.
Uselman,
Yes.
Reister,
No.
Jones, yes. And Georgella.
Yes. Motion passes 4-1. And we'll continue on next to pupil services. Consider appointment of an expulsion hearing officer for 2017-18. And we have a motion proposed for that.
I move that as provided for in Wisconsin Statutes 120.13, Mr. Frank J. Anadian be appointed as the independent hearing officer for the Fond du Lac School District with regard to proceedings for student expulsion during the 2017-18 school year, along with the delegation of authority of the superintendent to arrange for such other independent hearing officers as may be needed.
I'll s-
Second.
Okay. Motion and a second. And this is an annual appointment?
It is, yes. Mr. Andian has been with us for several years, does a very nice job, and we're looking forward to working with him again.
He's willing to do this, obviously.
Yes.
Keeps
Yeah.
coming back for more.
He's been doing it for many, many years. Yes,
Okay.
he does a nice job.
Any discussion from the board on this appointment? Okay, if none, then the clerk please call the vote.
Hopefully, you won't have any work this next year. then.
That would be
Right.
good.
Right, it'd be nice
That'd be
if you
nice.
didn't have to do anything for us, yeah.
Let's see, Uselman,
Yes.
Reister,
Yes.
Jones, yes. Strand,
Yes.
Georgella.
Yes, motion passes 5-0. And next on to board and administrator reports, and Dr. Siebert.
All right, thank you, Mr. Georgella. 4 items tonight. The first being just a notification of the high school orchestra trip to Honolulu over spring break of next year. Another example of great opportunities that our staff provides for our students, so that promises to be a wonderful trip. Number 2, just that the office will be closed, the district office will be closed, and the entire district actually, on the 4th of July, which is somehow already next week. Number 3, Mr. Yurgell and I talked about just a brief update for you on both the tennis courts and the gym floor, and John Williams is prepared to share that with you.
If you've been out, I don't know if any of you have been out, but the
Yes.
tennis courts right now we're waiting for the asphalt to completely cure so that we can get the lines painted on.
Is the rain helping or
The
hurting?
rain help, the
Oh,
rain does
okay.
help, heat and rain, obviously this week it's not the heat, but it all helps to get the oils out of
Okay.
the asphalt, so we're waiting on that. The field house floor, they're moving along, really well with that, it is all out, and they are starting to put the base, the scissor lock base in, and that they started, last Friday. I was in there this morning and they're probably about more than 2/3 across the floor. So once they get that in, then they'll end up moving the bleachers in so that they can take the floor out underneath the bleachers. That floor is still there, so they'll have to, they build up to it, they move the bleachers, take that out, build it, and then move them back into place. So it's moving along really well. Things are looking really good out there, so.
I noticed there was a nice long line of people coming to collect the old floorboards the first few days there that they
Yeah.
were out there.
And then we got so much rain on it that we ended up
Yeah, it might be.
recycling some of it, so.
Yeah, okay.
But
But-
that's.
That sounds good. So they're on schedule, on track for the gym floor, it sounds
Yes.
like?
Yep.
Great.
I actually stopped out last week, looked at the courts, and then I went into the gym, and they had the foam down and putting that first layer in. Had a conversation with a few of them, so, yeah, they're
Good.
We
working
did,
right
we
along.
did end up putting a vapor barrier down over the floor. Typically, they use just a lighter plastic. We used a little bit heavier plastic. Because after they did the test, we were a little bit higher. Some of it could have been attributed to the doors being open, and we weren't really getting the dehumidification that we had. But just as a precaution, the concrete slab looked in great condition. We had a couple cracks that we wanted to make sure were okay before we covered it up. And so I did have C.D. Smith come out and take a look at it, and their concrete person is very confident that it's just a normal crack. Ours we actually cut. They don't even cut them anymore. They let them crack naturally. So they will. Concrete cracks. So, and it wasn't very surprised that very little movement on the concrete itself.
So no surprises once the
No.
subfloor and everything was removed?
No surprises.
Good, good to hear.
Good to know.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
You have another thing, yes.
Yeah, and then just the last thing is that at our next board meeting, July 10th, that will also be our annual board retreat, which is a fancy name for just staying longer in this room. It's not like we go anywhere special. And after that, so that'll be after the meeting, we will have WASB Policy Services here to talk about what they could provide for the board to think about as well. We'll have Ted Knightsky, who is the director of CISA 6, who will be able to talk to us just a little bit about a continuous improvement model that's similar to strategic planning but looks a little bit different. And then, if you have retreat topics that you'd like to talk about, we have the Adopt a School as one already. But if you have other ones, if you'd like to send those to either Mark or I, we will piece together that agenda. And then anything else you want to talk about is always fair game and good as well. So we'll look forward to that. It's always
Right.
a good event.
Yeah, it is a good event.
Mhm.
So, right, any topics that you wish to have on that agenda, please let one of us know, and we'll do that. Thank you, Dr. Siebert.
Mhm.
Board members, not exactly full of student and staff activities, but if you have anything that
No.
involved, Mr. Strand, it sounds like you visited the high school, at least.
I was out there a couple times. Yeah.
Great.
I have somebody participating in the weightlifting for the summer, so we went out and, the first day with the boards, that was really fun to see. And then now I'm noticing the fencing and things appearing in the tennis court area, which is very nice. And we ended up over at Evans, getting lunch, with the summer school group. And then, we had tennis through the rec department, which was a very nice program. It's
Good.
over at Buttermilk though, and not at the high school, but that's okay. It was all
Sure.
good. So,
Okay, very good. Dr. Jones?
Nope.
Okay. Additional appropriate matters, does anybody have anything else they wish to bring forward here from the board? Any board members with any other comments? No? All right, next is audience to visitors and delegations. If anyone wishes to address the board on a district-related matter, it's their second opportunity, please do so. Welcome, good afternoon.
Sue?
Sue Heitzman, 209 East Division Street. Mrs. Breister asked, what could this district have done to make sure that all staff people knew what was going on? One email from one centralized person would have made it so much clearer. I got no such email, and most of us over here were shaking our heads. It didn't come. So I think directing one central person to put out proposals so staff is not blindsided. On a brighter note, summer school is finishing up this week, and we welcome all of you board members and staff, administrators, to come to Fondy High from 8 o'clock to 11:40 between now and Friday, and see the excellent job that we teachers and Tony Cruz and Mr. Gerhartz are providing.
And where would we need to appear at Fondy High?
Oh, just come to second floor. They're working on getting the first floor all cleared up for the first conference that's occurring in August.
Okay,
So second floor, or report to the office. Mr. Prus, Mr. Gerhartz can walk you around.
very good. Thank you for that invitation. All right. Anybody else wish to address the board on a district-related matter at this time? Okay, seeing no further, we'll close the second audience to visitors and delegations, and I'll take a motion for the adjournment into workshop.
I move to adjourn the regular meeting and convene in a workshop to review suggested new textbooks for Fond du Lac High School College Geology, AP Communications, and AP Government and Politics for the 2017-18 school year, and to discuss suggested revisions to the employee handbooks for teachers, professional educators, the Educational Support Professionals Association, and custodial maintenance employees, followed by an executive session to consider a student expulsion as provided for in Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1, A and F.
Second.
Motion and a second, and would the clerk please call the vote?
Usselman,
Yes.
Breister,
Yes.
Jones, yes, Strand,
Yes.
Trujillo.
Yes. Motion passes. We'll stand adjourned until the start of the workshop. Thank you, everybody. Call the workshop to order. Would the clerk please take the roll?
Breister,
Here.
Hayes. Wait a minute, I'm on the wrong sheet here. Jones here, Strand's here, Usselman,
Here.
Walk, and Trujillo.
Here. Okay, we have 5 members. And first, we're going to be discussing suggested new textbooks for Fond du Lac High School Geology, AP Communications, AP Government and Politics.
Yeah. So tonight, I'm happy that we're joined by 3 teachers representing these courses. So we have Lisa Steinacher on the end, who is here to talk a little bit about the AP Government and Politics textbook. This feels really
all
loud.
have what we have.
Yeah, if you want to see any of them, they're right
I'd
up
like to
there.
All
Thank
right.
you to Jim Prosser for stepping in to talk about the college geology textbook. He will not be the instructor of the course, but he is familiar with the text and can likely answer questions or can get back to us with answers as well. And then Pat Osowski is here to talk about the CAP Communications textbook. So we can kind of go through these one at a time. Each of them has sort of a different reason for being before you this evening. We can start with the AP Government and Politics text. Now, some of you have been on the board for a few years and may recall that a couple years back we had attempted to approve a new textbook for the AP Government and Politics book. And at that time, we had received some feedback from the community with concerns about some of the content, feeling as though perhaps it was slanted toward one political party over the other. As you can imagine, any textbook for a class related to government and politics is going to have some political content to it. And so we're very appreciative that Lisa Steinecker has taken the time to research the textbooks that are available and has another one before you tonight that we do feel as though will be a good fit for our students. And Lisa and I were talking a little bit before the meeting, and she had some great information to share about sort of the mission of the company that has put this textbook together. So I'm going to let her talk just a little bit about that.
This book was put out by Pearson, and part of their statements in the notes to the instructor is that they try to be as neutral as possible, and just the nature of the political beast, sometimes it might come off as, one way or another, and in class, of course, I strive to be as neutral as possible as well. And if there is something that comes into question in terms of a chart or a photograph or, a section of the textbook that might seem to favor one side over the other, those are where we get some of the best classroom discussions from, because students in AP government politics are very much savvy with those kinds of things, and they might point them out themselves. Otherwise, it's my job to go ahead and do that, and maybe get going on a conversation about bias one way or the other, and that sometimes leads to some really good class discussion. So I'm not so concerned when those kinds of things might be pointed out. There's one thing that might seem controversial in the book, but I really like how this book has a really good section for the constitutional underpinnings of government, and then striving to keep us current on Supreme Court cases that have come down in the last 8 years since we, that was about the length of time that the text we're using now has been in use. And it's a contemporary kind of class, so you have to have a text that stays on top of everything. And this is the 2016 presidential election edition of the book, so it's got a 2017 copyright, so it's right up to date. And so that's very helpful in terms of, particularly when it comes to Supreme Court decisions and rulings that have occurred in the last 8 years. It goes in depth explaining some of the things that, since I'm not a lawyer, some of the finer points, but it's hard to stay on top of all of those court things.
Sure.
But it goes through each branch of government very nicely, and the bureaucracy, foreign policy, and I think it's really outstanding in terms of all of the terms and vocabulary that go along with politics and government. And there's also some fabulous online resources that come with the book that I'm learning more about over the summer now, kind of at my leisure, getting to learn the new book and all of the things that it has to offer.
So if there are more things that come up as far as government or whatever, do you have access to that new information then through that textbook, like a subscription sort of thing?
Yes,
Or
they do
okay.
have online support for instructors.
Okay.
As things come down the pipe that they're best to use.
Thank you.
And the students have access to a lot of those things as well.
Sure.
Great.
So you said there was one area that you had concern, or not concern, but that might,
No, that was in terms of what had happened last
Oh,
time. I
okay,
think there was,
right.
Like one chart or something in the book
Okay.
that a community member
I-
was opposed to, and
remember that?
the high school administration was told at the time, but they never contacted me over the summer to say that someone is opposed to this book for such and such a reason. So I never had a chance to speak with that person and to find out exactly what they objected to. Both Mr. Pizzo at the time was the principal for the social studies department, and he handled the conversation with the community member, and in the end, it was a serious enough situation that the board opted not to renew.
Right.
So I stayed with the book that we had, then knowing that the 2016 election was coming up in just a few years, it's like, well, okay, we'll go ahead and hobble along, and use other online resources that are just kind of out there. And but it's nice to have a textbook that, I think George W. Bush was still the president with the last textbook that we had, which is really not a very long time ago, but like a class like AP Government Politics, there's a lot of policy that comes along with the
Yes,
course of 8 years.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Just for information, how much does one of those textbooks cost about?
No, I'm not.
Trying to find out how much textbooks are getting.
The kids don't each get one anymore, do they? I mean, or do they just,
do,
they
yeah.
do on that one?
They do on that one. It's actually, having a physical textbook to go and look at and handle is very convenient thing for a student to use.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, I
Especially
like
for these
that.
AP courses and stuff, and then these
So
are
yeah,
women.
each student will have a textbook, and then they'll have the online resources as well to use.
So
can
how many
tell you how much it
students are
probably
you
costs the university.
addressing?
Right,
The
Roughly.
last time I had contact with the guidance counselor was the last week of school, and as of, June, there were 8 students that were enrolled in the class for next year. Now, in the last couple of years, I've always had students that have added at semester time.
Mhm.
So in terms of the cost for the book, the representative said, well, then maybe you want to go with the correct amount of hard covers that you're going to need for the students who are actually enrolled. But then the online licenses for somebody joining up, at semester time, they would at least have access to the online textbook and the resources. The licensing, I think, are a little bit less maybe than the actual textbook.
Yeah, and I don't actually have the price quote here for that particular book, but generally speaking, it's between $75 and $100 for a hardcover textbook.
Yeah, just, thank
So
you.
does your class go through government from local level to state, federal, or?
It is mainly at the national level, but during the course of the year, we will talk about state and local government, particularly, after the AP test is done in May, we kind of get into some of the more state and local things. The test that students take is just on the national level.
Okay, all right, very good. Any other questions on that?
No, sounds
offering?
really interesting.
Just to
Right.
review our general process for this, for those of you that are newer to the board, so by board policy, any new text is available for community review for 10 days, at least 10 days, prior to the board approving the text. So the notice has been put out regarding these textbooks, and we'll actually come back to ask for your approval at the July meeting. So there'll be sufficient time for community members to stop by if they wish to view the text and get any comments to you prior to that. The next resource then that we'll talk about is the college geology resource. And as I mentioned, Jim is here to answer questions that you might have, but Joe Fenrick will actually be the teacher of that course. And college geology is a new course that you approved earlier this year for next year. Joe currently teaches the course at UW Fond du Lac, so he has experience with teaching the course, just not at the high school. So we're excited to add that offering to the high school as an earth science, post-high school credit offering course. And again, you have the textbook there. I don't know, Jim, if there's anything that you wanted to add about it. I appreciate you filling in here quick for us.
I just briefly looked at it. I know that that's the same book that is used over at UW Fond du Lac.
Good.
Looks very good, 2018 copyright, very interesting.
The high school version is just with a stouter cover on it to make it last.
Makes sense.
And there's not too many controversial issues within geology?
No, the earth is the earth, there you go.
All the major topics are covered in there.
Earthquake.
It's a standard curriculum for geology.
Good. Anybody have any other questions regarding the geology?
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Prosser.
Then our final resource this evening is for our CAP Communications course. Now, Communications has been a course that's been in existence at Fond du Lac High School for several years, but when Pat joined our staff, he started doing the research into, is this a course that we could offer as a CAP class, which allows our students, again, to earn some college credit for completion of the course at the high school. So Pat was able to get approval to teach the course as a CAP course with himself as the instructor. And he'll tell you a little bit about the resource, but again, it is a resource because it's a CAP course that we are required to begin using.
I don't want to, I mostly answer questions, but as a CAP class, I have to use one of the textbooks that UWO uses for their 111 class is what the Introduction to Public Speaking is. And so this is one of them, the Public Speaking and Civic Engagement. I could get into a lot of the specifics. Most introductory to public speaking class books are all the same. It's pretty much how to give a speech. Here's some organizations, here's some things. There's a couple main reasons I could talk about some of the specific minor things about the way I teach it, but probably the two main reasons I chose this text out of the 5, one being selfish. In my prior district, I taught with this book for about 6 or 7 years. So I know it. This is the new edition, but it hasn't changed that much. The second reason is that it has an emphasis on civic engagement. So it's about getting not just public speaking in a vacuum, but public speaking as a foundation of democracy My communication masters, I have a poli-sci minor, so that's kind of right in my wheelhouse of things I've
Perfect.
combined in my own life. So when this book came out, 6-7 years ago, that was the one I thought made the most sense to me, to kind of fit into how to make these kids understand the importance of civic engagement and how communication can do that. I may probably revive one of my old assignments of having them come to a governmental meeting, so watching this, so that they can kind of see what civic engagement looks like. Just to kind of
And I was just going to ask you if you have the students come here and address.
I did that as a past assignment, and I probably will do it again,
Yeah.
because I think it's good for them to see this level, and I guess I push it a lot in class too, that this is my wife, I live in Oshkosh, my wife's on the board of review, in Oshkosh, so I mean, that's always kind of amazed me, is like, that's the good politics, that it's all local, and it's,
Right.
people just giving their time to do that. So, we'll probably do it, but that's the main reason I picked this one out of it. There's some minor things too, just about the way I teach, introductions. I mean, if you want to know, I can tell you, but it's probably pretty cool.
So are these typically students who have had no prior exposure to public speaking?
Most likely, this year, I mean, we taught it this year, it was kind of different because it was not a CAP class and became one. Typically at my prior district, what we get is we get a lot of students that want the credit. We get the students that want the resume line of taking the college class. And so as far as ability, I get people that, I guess just looking at the class list, I know I coach forensics, assistant coach at the high school. There's a couple of kids that are on the forensics team. So I mean, we've got people that are comfortable. We've got, I usually have a good handful of people that have some, probably not what I would call actually communication apprehensive, but pretty close,
Yeah.
Where it's very tough for them. So it's kind of a, get them to be more comfortable than they were when they came in, because usually
Right.
right home on day one.
There's
That's public speaking, it's great, I think.
There's just not too many fields to go into where it doesn't
Don't
come
need
into
it,
play
right,
anymore.
yeah.
And a lot of students, I mean, this class would be accepted at Marine Park. This class is, WO, NEW 6 years later class. So it's a good start for them, and it's a little,
Yes.
I mean, my district was smaller than this, but it's even still with a large district like this, it's probably a little more friendly to be in that classroom if you're apprehensive than in a college classroom where
Right.
you probably know nobody
Right.
Makes good sense.
and won't see them at all again ever, so.
Good. Well, I hope it goes well. Any other questions, comments from the board? Okay. So these
you.
three, in July, we will give formal approval.
Right, we'll put these on the agenda for approval in July. If you do receive any questions or concerns from the community during that public review time, if you'd like to forward those to me for further investigation or anything of that matter, I certainly can connect with these teachers to answer any questions that might arise.
Great, thank you. Thank you each for coming here tonight.
Yeah, thank you guys very
and
much.
Discussing
Hope
this.
you're having a good summer.
Yeah. Next is to discuss suggested revisions to the employee handbooks. And we've got some drafts in front of us, I believe we each received at home. So where shall we begin on these?
Completely up to you, which, I think the teacher, professional educator one is on top.
Sure, that's on top.
So we can walk through that. Ms. Simon, would you like to walk us through these? There's very subtle changes.
Right.
Yeah.
So just on page 2, you'll notice there's date changes.
Then the leave sharing program is in here now too.
What was
Yeah.
it?
The leave sharing
Sharing
program is
program, yeah.
included, I noticed, yep.
Yeah, that was the
So the
biggest.
next change is on page 8. And it's the notification of retirement. We came up with forms that we use now, so we use those instead of the written letter, so we just put that and access to the website. And then we pretty much have let people retire whenever they wanted, where we have this an exception to be granted. We weren't following our policy, so we changed the policy to make it what we actually do in practice. Any questions on that? All right. And then on page 9, there's a change in elementary substitute payment, because basically we don't pay people the 1 to 15 minutes, the 16 to 30. Most of them sub that full 45-minute period, and then they receive the hourly rate. And then we have done some other things at the elementary when we haven't had subs and they've doubled up, we've paid them $40 for the day, so. Then you can see the insurance changes on page 10, where we've gone from 88% to 87% of employee contribution. And then we've changed the MOI to 6,000. And then, of course, we've added the language that we talked about earlier in the spring regarding the shared leave program has been added to the handbook. And then, of course, all those numbers have just changed, and I think that was it. I know Linda had called regarding the stipends, and the stipends committee has been working. We've had 3 or 4 meetings, but because we don't know what the budget will be, the governor's budget isn't here yet, and we don't have a business person. So once we have that information, we'll probably bring this handbook back to you if there's gonna be the last page. If there's gonna be a change in the stipend structure, because we're looking at trying to increase, but we don't know how that increase will look, because we don't necessarily have the money right now.
So what is our timetable for actually approving this, or do we have one?
What we've typically done is since we've had handbooks, have the workshop, the last meeting in June, ask the board to approve them at the July meeting so that we have them ready for August. Because early August, we start to send out the back-to-school information with links to the updated handbooks.
And we feel like the stipend issue will be addressed by August, hopefully?
Well, we don't know.
I'm hopeful, I'll say that.
If the governor's budget gets, I guess that's the thing, once we know how much money we actually have to work with and we have a business director, we'll know.
Well, and then it's gonna be trying to get people together in the summer, which is sometimes easier said than,
I
or
think we
harder
talked
than
about
think.
meeting right away in August. I don't remember anybody being able to make it in July, but once we started August, the group would come back in. They really wanted to get this settled. So
And ultimately, these stipends get approved by this body
Absolutely.
formally,
Right.
so.
That would be where we would talk about how we wanted to do it, because some of people were talking about increasing percentages, other people were talking about increasing the base, leaving the percentages the same, because everything's based on 30,000. If we went to 31,000, how would that look? So, there's a bunch of ideas out there, so we're waiting to see.
How big is that committee?
Boy,
8 people maybe?
seemed bigger than that even, but
Yeah,
that sounds
we
about right.
We have representatives, male, female, from the high school. We have athletics, we have music represented, we have
Student.
clubs represented.
Yeah.
We have tried to get representatives from every middle school, 2 people from every middle school, and we have tapped different people, and they just have not come. So there's representatives from all levels that this, that the stipends affect, and so.
Are you on
Yeah,
this
I
one?
sit on it on behalf of the board.
Okay, all right.
So right now, yeah, we're on basically a holding pattern.
So if we approve the handbook, though, when it comes before us in July, we'll be approving what's here.
Right.
Correct.
And,
We can always come back with,
We can amend the stipends
Right. Mhm.
appendix.
At any time, we don't have to wait till next year.
Right.
Right, yeah. That, I'm not too concerned about that, but I would like the stipend committee to at least have something to present to us in a fairly timely manner.
right, and I'm assuming it might be like the shared leave program, where we would do a workshop with you, and then come back and vote on the handbook.
Right.
so the stipends, originally, they were like a negotiated item with the FEA, but that hasn't been the case since 2011. It's been a committee since, is that right?
We haven't done anything with the stipends since 2011.
This is our
Okay.
first review.
This is
So
the
it would
first
be,
reading.
okay, okay.
Yep.
Are there things on here, though, that were not negotiated? I'm thinking like the strength and conditioning, that's new. That wasn't a FEA negotiated thing, was it?
No.
We-
There's been things that have been added
Right.
over
Okay.
time.
Yeah, there have things been added, so we'll see this again,
Okay,
even if we approve the handbook as it is.
okay.
Okay. I have the ESPA handbook next.
You'll notice on the first page, we put association back in, because ESPA has recertified as a union, so that's why the association is added back in.
How many people are in? I'm sorry.
I wanna say, I'm guessing, but.
From
I
now
wanna
on, I'll ask
say-
before the meeting, so.
Right, I wanna say there was 138 or something,
Okay.
That might not be exact, but
Okay.
it's in the neighborhood between 130 and 150.
Okay.
So once again, on page 5, you'll notice the change in premium contribution, and same thing on 6. And I think the only other thing that's changed in this handbook, besides the MOI, is the shared leave program. Other than that, this handbook hasn't changed.
Same.
And a lot of A's were added.
A lot of A's
Yeah.
were added, that were taken out or re-added, so.
Okay, any questions with that one right now? Okay, custodial and maintenance employees?
Used to be the same.
It would be the same thing on 5 and 6, the insurance changes, and then the addition of the shared leave program. And that really is, well, the only changes to the handbooks.
Okay. So we will see these again, and other than the stipends, there shouldn't be a whole lot of changes.
I don't think so,
No?
I think that's, that we're looking for the future.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
No.
All right, very good. Thank you. And with that, I will take a motion for an adjournment to the executive session.
I move the Board of Education adjourn the workshop and convene in an executive session to consider 3, is that correct? 3
No.
student expulsions?
One.
No,
Just
one,
one?
one.
Okay, so then we should. To consider 1 student expulsion as provided for in Wisconsin statutes 19.85, paren 1 A and F. A, deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial or hearing before that governmental body. F, considering financial, medical, social, personal histories or disciplinary data of specific persons, preliminary consideration of specific personnel problems, or the investigation of charges against specific persons, except where paragraph B applies, which, if discussed in public, would be likely to have a substantial adverse effect upon the reputation of any person referred to in such histories or data or involved in such problems or investigations.
Second.
Easy for you to say.
Motion and a second. Would the clerk please call the vote?
Brewster.
Yes.
Jones, yes. Graham.
Yes.
Gisselman.
Yes.
Georgiello.
Yes, motion passes. We stand adjourned until the executive session. Thank you.